Hi, my name is Professor Wing Lam from U21 Global. Welcome to this video case on the National Kidney Foundation scandal. Singapore has always had a bit of a reputation for being a squeaky clean nation, so this scandal came as a bit of a surprise. What's even more surprising is the fact that it concerns the Singapore National Kidney Foundation, the NKF, which is one of the most well-known charities in Singapore. In July 2005, a story emerged that Mr. T.T. Durai, the CEO of NKF, had abused his power and had squandered donations that were meant for patient care. Like many charities, NKF is a non-profit organization. What's notable about NKF, though, is the size of its turnover. Approximately 116 million Singapore dollars annually, and most of these donations came through small but regular monthly donations from around 1 million Singapore donors. Now remember that Singapore has a population of about 4 million, so that's roughly 1 in 4 donating to the NKF. This whole saga really began in April 2004 when the Straits Times newspaper published an article entitled NKF, Controversially Ahead of Its Time. This article was quite interesting because it was raising concerns about the way in which these charities were using fundraising methods that arguably were very commercial in nature. The article highlighted one particular incident where a contractor, who also happened to be a NKF donor, was angry at the fact that he was asked to replace these gold-plated taps worth at least $1,000 in the plush offices of NKF's CEO, Mr. T.T. Durai. Now this story created a lot of tension and anger with NKF, consequence of which NKF decided to sue the Straits Times, demanding over $3 million worth in damages due to lost public donations and defamation. When the trial eventually came to court, it actually backfired on NKF because what came out on day one of the trial was the lifestyle of NKF's CEO that included a salary of around 600,000 Singapore dollars, despite the fact that NKF was a charity organization. What also came out was the fact that Mr. Durai had flown first class, he had a number of chauffeured cars, and he had a string of other benefits that seemed inconsistent with what a charity should be. The trial obviously was not going well for NKF, and they decided to withdraw their defamation suit on the second day of the trial. By that time, of course, the damage had already been done, and information about Mr. Durai's pay and lifestyle were already in the public domain. This caused public outrage, and a significant number of donors decided to terminate their contributions to NKF as a consequence of this. Things really deteriorated from that point on, and it got to the stage where there was no option for Mr. Durai but to resign. Not only did he resign, but the entire NKF board resigned, and the new interim chairman and CEO was appointed in the interim. Because of all the revelations, an independent investigation was carried out by KPMG on behalf of the government, and this resulted in a substantial 300-page report. Some of the key findings from the report were excessive levels of spending, significant pay rises, and a general lack of corporate governance. So really a bad scorecard for NKF. Significantly, in 2003, NKF had claimed that 52 cents out of every dollar went on patient care, when in reality the audit carried out by KPMG indicated that only 10 cents out of every Singapore dollar actually went to patient care. Another unusual finding from the audit report by KPMG was the fact that NKF had awarded two IT contracts worth 3 million and 4 million to companies owned by a certain Mr. Faris Abu Bakr, who was actually a close friend of Mr. Durai. Later it was discovered that none of these projects were carried out successfully, yet no action was actually taken against these two firms, something that is generally considered as very irregular. The spotlight was also thrown on the NKF board, headed by then Chairman Richard Yong. In the case of NKF, the board had delegated authority to an executive committee, which in turn had delegated authority to Mr. T.T. Durai. So it seemed the CEO had complete control of NKF as an organization and was completely entrusted to run the organization as he saw fit. As a consequence of the findings from the KPMG report, the new NKF board decided to file a civil suit not only against Mr. Durai, but also the former chairman of NKF and also 4 former NKF board members. This case is particularly interesting because it brings to light a number of different issues. One issue is of how CEOs should be compensated. Many would argue that CEOs should be paid based on their performance. Now, if that's the case, isn't it better for NKF, who can hire a CEO who can raise more funds for the charity, despite having a more lavish approach to expenses? Isn't that better than hiring someone who really can't do the job, but perhaps is more frugal in nature? The second question concerns the role of boards. Board members often have duties elsewhere, and they often leave it to the CEO to handle the day-to-day running of an organization. In this particular case, can you really fault the NKF board for this? Finally, if you can't really trust the CEO to manage an organization, who can you really trust? What needs to be put in place in terms of governance to make sure that CEOs are kept in check? Thanks for listening to this video case. If you're interested in finding out a bit more, please visit the following links, or you can email cases@u21global.edu.sg.